Hey, what's up? My name is Karthik. I host the Design Your Thinking podcast. This is day 17 of my 90-day in video challenge. Well, this is a challenge I started about 17 days back to help me overcome the fear of being in front of this very camera that you're watching me through right now. Super excited to be back for the 17th day in a row. Now, when I started this series, a question I asked myself is, if I have to put out videos for 90 days in a row, what am I really going to be talking about? And after a lot of thinking, I actually came down to three topics: business, podcasting, and storytelling. So today's video actually falls into the second bucket, which is podcasting. And it was actually triggered by an email that came in yesterday from one of my students who is actually in the verge of recording his first episode. And he asked me, how do I go about picking the right microphone for my podcast? And I needed to be under a certain budget. So when I actually hit reply to tell him exactly how to go about finding the right microphone for his show, I decided to record this video so you know exactly what my response was. Now, before we jumped into the how, I really want to talk about why really quick, because it was a question that was haunting my head for a long time. Are people giving too much of importance for this microphone? Why are people talking about it all the time instead of actually focusing on the content of their show? But I realized the answer was but I realized that I was wrong when one day there was a listener of mine who came to me and told me that he likes my show because of the production quality. And that made me think about this fundamental think about podcasting that we don't realize often. That, in a podcast, the only thing that connects you as a podcaster to your audience is your voice. And it's easy for us to ignore that aspect and just focus on the content. But instead, if you take a moment to actually think about how you sound, how clear you are, how articulate you are, you start to actually change the game. Because there are so many people who have good content, but the biggest problem I've seen with a lot of podcasters who start off is paying less attention to the production quality. And one of the key elements of production quality is your microphone. Now that we have the why out of our plate, let's focus on how you go about picking the right microphone for your podcast. Now, perhaps after seeing this video, you're going to jump to Amazon or your favorite online store to start browsing for microphones. And once you start doing that, you are going to be presented with 100 different options of microphones. So I'm sure you're going to get overwhelmed and tired for that. So I just want to help you first by understanding what are the different kinds of microphones that you're going to see in the market. And broadly speaking, there are two different kinds of microphones that you're going to come across. The first is the dynamic microphone, and the second is the condenser type microphone. But essentially, the difference between these two kinds of microphones is the underlying technology it's built on. But I don't want to really confuse you with all the tech stuff. But instead, I want to focus on things that you can actually use to make a decision. So what is the difference between a dynamic and condenser type microphone? Well, first difference is the dynamic microphone is less sensitive and the condenser type microphone is more sensitive generally. Now, what do I really mean by less or more sensitive? Say, for instance, I have the microphone right now in front of me. How much of my voice is it picking up as compared to the noise that's coming from around me? If it's actually picking up a lot of the noise that's coming from around me, then the microphone is highly sensitive. But if the microphone is less sensitive, like the dynamic mics, it's going to pick up only my voice. So that's what I mean by highly sensitive or less sensitive. That's the first difference. Dynamic microphones are less sensitive, whereas condenser microphones are highly sensitive. The second difference is power consumption. Generally speaking, dynamic microphones do not need external power as compared to condenser type microphones, which actually require external power. Now, that said, there are differences that you will see in dynamic microphones. Some of these dynamic microphones actually take external power, what we call as phantom power, to boost its sensitivity levels. So that's the second difference. The third difference is in size. Dynamic microphones are generally larger compared to condenser type microphones. Now, it has nothing to do with the performance, but I think generally that's how they constructed because of the underlying technology they use. So these are the three differences that you will see between dynamic microphones and condenser type microphones. So that said, how do you go about finding the right or picking the right microphone for you? Well, I would say go with 4 parameters. And this is what I did when I picked up my microphones. First, ruggedness. When you actually are a podcaster, it so happens that you would record your shows sometimes in the studio, sometimes you're traveling. So make sure that the microphone actually is rugged enough to go with you wherever you go. So ruggedness is one important thing. And when it comes to ruggedness, dynamic microphones are better as compared to condenser type microphones. The second parameter I want you to consider is sensitivity levels. Now, what do I really mean by that? When you're actually a podcaster, you're probably traveling sometimes, and sometimes you're actually recording places which are not ideal. So you want to make sure that the microphone actually is able to pick up only your voice and ignore all of the ambient or background noise. So it's important for you to consider two other parameters here. One is make sure that the microphone that you pick is less sensitive. The second is make sure that the microphone you pick is unidirectional. Now that reminds me, there are a few other kinds of microphones that you will come across. One of them is what I mentioned, which is unidirectional. Essentially what it means is it picks up sound or noise coming from one direction. Apart from this, you will find bidirectional and omnidirectional mics, which actually means that it can pick sound coming from two different places or all around it. So essentially I want you to consider picking up a unidirectional mic. So that's the third one. And the fourth parameter I want you to consider is USB support. Now, why do I really talk about USB? Well, simply put, USB is important if you're traveling, because if you're in the studio, you perhaps have a microphone which has XLR output, which means you can actually connect your mic directly to your mixer. But if you're traveling, you don't want to be carrying your mixer along with you. So it's going to be just you, your laptop, and your microphone. So it's important for you to be recording your interviews just using your microphone and your laptop. So make sure that microphone that you buy actually has USB support. So these are the four parameters I want you to consider when it comes to picking your microphone. I really hope that was useful. Now, a question I get asked all the time is, Karthik, what is the microphone you use for your podcast? Well, I use two microphones, in fact. The first one is the Heil PR40, which is the microphone I use in my studio. My second microphone is the Audio-Technica ATR2100. Now, it's my go-to microphone for both in-studio use and travel use. So it's been an essential part of my backpack when I'm traveling, because I do interviews when I'm traveling as well. So it works perfectly well. I plug it using the USB cable into my laptop and record my interviews. And I use it inside the studio. If I have guests coming in, I just use the XLR and connect it to my mixer. And it's a fantastic microphone. The quality is extremely good, and a lot of people have not been able to differentiate the quality of sound that comes from ATR2100 from the Heil PR40. But I think if you're considering picking up a microphone, I should go pick up the Audio-Technica ATR2100. Again, I really hope this video was useful for you as much as it was useful for me to externalize my recommendations. But I think what I really want you to take away from this video is it does not matter how expensive the microphone is. All it matters is you make sure that the four parameters I talked about is met. Just make sure that the microphone is rugged, it's less sensitive, it's unidirectional, and it supports USB. I think these are the four parameters I would look for in any microphone. I guess that's all I have for today. I really hope this video was useful for you as much as it was helpful for me to externalize my thoughts. If you're someone who's watching this video on YouTube, please make sure you hit the subscribe button right below. Or if you're watching this elsewhere, like the video, share the video with your friends. Truly appreciate you taking the time to be with me today. Until I see you in the next video. Ciao. Bye.